The day the aliens arrived changed everything. It was a normal Tuesday morning when the massive ship appeared above New York City. Unlike the chaos portrayed in old movies, there was no immediate panic. Instead, people stopped, stared upward, and took pictures with their phones. The ship hovered silently, a gleaming oval that reflected sunlight and rainbow patterns across the city below. Commander Tom Adams was in his office at the Global Space Agency when the call came in. At 45, with graying hair at his temples and deep lines around his eyes from years of stress, Adams was the most respected space program leader on Earth. "Sir, you need to come see this," his assistant said, voice shaking. Within an hour, Adams was on a helicopter heading toward the landing site. The aliens had set down in Central Park, their smaller shuttle craft creating a perfect circle of flattened grass. By the time Adams arrived, military forces had established a perimeter, and world leaders were connecting via emergency video conference. "I'll handle the initial contact," Adams told the assembled generals and politicians on his tablet screen. "If they wanted to harm us, they would have done it already." As Adams approached the ship, a door slid open without a sound. Three figures emerged, walking with a strange, fluid grace. They looked almost human, 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head, but their skin had a bluish tint and their eyes were large and completely black. They wore what appeared to be simple gray uniforms with no visible weapons. The tallest alien stepped forward. "I am Captain Vox of the Galactic Alliance," it said in perfect English. "We have been observing your world for some time." Adams introduced himself and led the aliens to a hastily prepared meeting room in a nearby building. Representatives from major world governments joined remotely, faces serious on large screens around the room. "We have come to formally welcome Earth to the galactic community," Captain Vox announced. "There are over 300 species in our alliance spanning thousands of star systems." A ripple of excitement passed through the human representatives. First contact, proof they weren't alone in the universe, access to incredible technology and knowledge. But then Captain Vox continued. "We have classified your species as Level 2, capable of basic space travel, but without practical faster-than-light capability." The alien's voice carried a strange tone that Adams couldn't quite identify. "This qualifies humans for limited membership status." "Limited membership?" asked the President of the United States. "Yes, species at your development level can serve valuable roles in our alliance. Your people can provide raw materials, simple labor, and cultural artifacts. In return, we can offer protection and limited technological advancement appropriate to your level." Adams frowned. This sounded less like an invitation to join a community of equals and more like colonization. The second alien, who introduced itself as Science Officer Mech, activated a small device that projected detailed images of Earth space technology. "We've studied your propulsion systems, your space stations, and your theoretical models for advanced travel." The alien made a sound that took Adams a moment to recognize as laughter. "Is something funny?" Adams asked, feeling heat rise in his face. "Forgive me," Officer Mech said, not sounding sorry at all. "It's just that your approaches are so primitive. You're still using chemical rockets as your primary method of leaving your gravity well, and your theories about faster-than-light travel are mostly based on mathematical errors." The third alien, Security Director Lon, pointed to an image of the International Space Station. "This is your most advanced permanent structure in space. It would not survive a single micrometeor storm without our protection." For the next 2 hours, the aliens displayed Earth space technology and systematically ridiculed it. They laughed at rocket designs, mocked spacesuit technology, and dismissed Earth's best scientific theories as charming attempts. Adams sat quietly, anger building inside him. He had spent his life dedicated to pushing humanity toward the stars. He had led teams that designed the most advanced propulsion systems on Earth. And now, these aliens were treating humanity's greatest achievements like a child's crayon drawings. "Perhaps," Captain Vox said, "we can demonstrate what real space technology looks like." With a wave of his hand, another hologram appeared, the alien mother ship. "Our vessel can travel between stars in days. It generates its own gravity, produces no waste, and could easily destroy your entire planet if we wished." The captain's black eyes fixed on Adams. "Though of course we would never do such a thing to a potential alliance member." The threat was clear, even if carefully wrapped in diplomatic language. When the meeting ended, the aliens returned to their ship with promises of more discussions in the coming days. Adams walked alone to the edge of the park, looking up at the massive alien vessel still visible in the darkening sky. "Commander Adams," he turned to see Dr. Emily Reed, one of Earth's leading physicists, approaching him. With her wild curly hair and intense eyes, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. "Did you notice something odd about their technology demonstrations?" she asked without preamble. Adams shook his head, "Just that they're centuries ahead of us." "That's just it," Emily said, lowering her voice. "They showed us their ships, their weapons, their communication devices, but they were incredibly vague about how any of it actually works. They never once showed us the underlying principles." Adams thought back to the meeting. She was right. The aliens had displayed their technological superiority but had carefully avoided explaining any of the science behind it. "There's something else," Emily continued. "When I asked about quantum tunneling approaches to FTL travel, that one called mech seemed nervous, like I'd said something wrong or something right." "Something right," Adams murmured. Later that night, Adams couldn't sleep. The alien's mockery played over and over in his mind. He stared at his ceiling, thinking about humanity's place in this new expanded universe. If Earth accepted limited membership, humans would essentially become servants to more advanced species. They would be given only the technology the Alliance deemed appropriate, kept permanently in a subservient position. But what if there was another way? What if the aliens weren't telling the whole truth about what humans could achieve? As dawn broke, Adams made a decision. He picked up his phone and called the president. "Madame President, I need emergency funding and authority. We're going to build our own starship using our own technology and ideas." He paused, then added, "And we're going to show these aliens that they've underestimated humanity." In their ship above Earth, Captain Vox and Officer Mech watched monitors showing Adams making calls, scientists being assembled, resources being gathered. "They're so predictable," Mech said. "Hurt their pride and they react exactly as expected." But Captain Vox wasn't laughing anymore. "Don't underestimate them," he warned. "There's something about these humans, their unpredictability concerns me." "What can they possibly do?" Mech scoffed. "Their science is primitive, their understanding of spacetime is flawed, perhaps," Vox said quietly, "or perhaps they just approach problems differently than we do." He zoomed in on Adams, now surrounded by Earth's best scientists, determination clear on all their faces. "Keep watching them closely," Vox ordered. "Very closely indeed." 3 days after the aliens' arrival, Commander Adams stood before the newly formed Global Response Council. The room buzzed with tension as representatives from every major nation waited for him to speak. "Ladies and gentlemen," Adams began, his voice steady despite his lack of sleep, "we have two choices. Accept the aliens' offer of limited membership and become servants to their alliance, or prove we deserve better." The Russian representative leaned forward. "And how do you suggest we do that, Commander? You heard them. Our technology is centuries behind theirs." Adams clicked a button, and a holographic image appeared above the center of the table. A rough design for a spaceship unlike anything Earth had built before. "Project Longshot," he announced. "We're going to build our own faster-than-light ship." The room erupted in a mix of laughter and outrage. The Chinese delegate stood up, shaking his head. "Impossible. The aliens made it clear such technology is beyond our scientific understanding." "Is it?" Adams countered. "Or do they just want us to believe that?" He nodded to Dr. Emily Reed, who stood up and addressed the council. "The aliens showed us their technology but carefully avoided explaining how any of it works. I think they're hiding something they don't want us to discover." "Even if that's true," said the European Union representative, "how can we possibly develop FTL technology in any reasonable time frame? Our best estimates put such development centuries away." Adams smiled for the first time in days. By thinking outside the box, by trying approaches the aliens might have overlooked or dismissed, he clicked to the next slide, and by putting our best people on it. The image changed to show a woman with short blonde hair and intense blue eyes. She wore stained work clothes and had a pen stuck behind her ear. "This is Kate Miller," Adams said, "former NASA engineer currently running her own aerospace startup. She's been working on unconventional propulsion theories for years, theories that the scientific community mostly rejected as impossible." "If they're impossible, why are we considering them?" asked the Japanese delegate. "Because impossible is just another word for not tried hard enough yet," said a voice from the back of the room. Kate Miller herself walked forward, carrying a beat-up laptop under her arm. And because the math actually works, even if it breaks some of our current understanding of physics. Over the next hour, Kate explained her theories. She spoke about folding space rather than moving through it, about using the quantum properties of certain elements in ways never attempted before, about harnessing dark energy as a propulsion source. Half the scientists in the room looked skeptical. The other half looked intrigued. The aliens use technology that clearly works on principles we haven't mastered yet, Kate concluded. But that doesn't mean we can't discover those principles ourselves, in our own way. After heated debate, the council voted. Project Longshot would receive emergency global funding and resources. A new facility would be built in the Nevada desert, far from prying alien eyes. The best scientists and engineers from around the world would be quietly recruited. 1 week later, construction began on the facility. 2 weeks after that, the core team was assembled, 50 brilliant minds, all sworn to secrecy, all working toward what most considered an impossible goal. Meanwhile, the aliens continued their diplomatic meetings. They provided limited information about the galactic community, offered appropriate technology upgrades for Earth's agricultural and medical systems, and continued to subtly remind human leaders of their vastly superior power. "We've noticed unusual activity in your Nevada region," Captain Vox mentioned casually during a meeting with the UN Security Council. "Large shipments of rare materials, movement of certain scientists. May we ask what Earth is working on there?" "Weather monitoring systems," replied the American president smoothly. "Nothing that would interest a species as advanced as yours." Captain Vox's black eyes revealed nothing, but he nodded. "Of course, though we would be happy to provide simple weather control technology as part of our assistance package." The next day, a new alien arrived on Earth. Officer Zill, introduced as a cultural attaché. In reality, his job was to observe human activities and report back to the Alliance. "I'm very interested in human innovation," Zill told Commander Adams when they first met. "Would it be possible for me to tour some of your research facilities?" Adams smiled politely. "Of course, we'd be happy to show you our space center in Houston." He carefully avoided mentioning Nevada or Project Longshot, but keeping secrets from the aliens proved difficult. Their ships could scan for unusual energy signatures. Their drones, disguised as Earthbirds, observed from above, and they had planted listening devices in most major government buildings. At Project Longshot's facility, Kate and her team worked around the clock. They built prototype after prototype, failing repeatedly but learning from each failure. They worked without using connected computers, drawing plans by hand, communicating only in person to avoid alien surveillance. 3 months into the project, Kate burst into Adam's office, her eyes wild with excitement. "We've done it," she whispered, even though the room was regularly swept for bugs. "The mini prototype worked. We created a stable micro-wormhole in the lab. It only lasted for 0.3 seconds, but it was real." Adams felt his heart race. "How soon until we can scale it up?" "6 months, maybe less if we push harder," Kate said. "But there's a problem. The energy requirements are massive and the system is, well, it's not exactly stable." Meaning our ship is going to look like a nightmare. Multiple redundant systems, backup generators for the backup generators, cooling systems that will make the whole vessel look like a junkyard creation. Kate ran a hand through her hair. "It'll work, I think, but it's going to be the ugliest spacecraft ever built." Adams laughed. "As long as it flies, I don't care if it looks like a garbage truck." Unknown to them, Officer Zill had managed to place a listening device on one of the project's supply trucks. That night, he heard a partial recording of their conversation. He couldn't make out all the details, but he heard enough to be concerned. "The humans are attempting to build their own FTL vessel," Zill reported to Captain Vox. "It sounds primitive and dangerous, but they claim to have created a micro-wormhole." Vox's face showed the first signs of alarm. "Impossible. Their understanding of spacetime is fundamentally flawed." "Perhaps," said Zill, "but they're approaching the problem differently than our scientists would. They're using methods our science council rejected centuries ago as too unstable." "Too unstable?" Vox repeated. "You mean too dangerous," nodded. "If they succeed, they could destroy half their planet. If they fail," he paused. "If they fail but survive, they'll have learned enough to eventually succeed. Either way, the Alliance's control protocols for Level 2 species will be compromised." Captain Vox stood silent for a long moment, staring at the image of Earth rotating on his view screen. "Begin Phase 1 intervention," he finally ordered. Subtle sabotage only, make it look like equipment failures, human error, nothing traceable to us. And if that doesn't work, Zil asked. Vox's black eyes narrowed. Then we move to phase 2, but let's hope it doesn't come to that. The Alliance hasn't had to sterilize a planet in over 300 years. Back in Nevada, Kate and her team continued working, unaware that they were now in a race not just for respect but for survival. The prototype ship began taking shape in the massive underground hangar, a strange, asymmetrical creation that bore little resemblance to traditional spacecraft designs. Adams stood at the observation window, watching the construction. "We're calling it the HMS Ugly Duckling," he told Emily Reed, who stood beside him. "It's not pretty, but if Kate's right, it's going to change everything." "If we survive the launch," Emily said quietly. Adams nodded grimly. "There is that." Neither of them noticed the small bird perched outside, its mechanical eyes recording everything. The first accident happened exactly 2 weeks after the aliens began their sabotage. A power regulator exploded in the main testing bay, sending shards of metal flying across the room. 2 engineers were injured, and months of work was destroyed in seconds. Equipment failure, the investigation team concluded. The regulator was operating within normal parameters, but something caused it to overload. Kate Miller wasn't convinced. She stayed late that night examining the melted remains of the regulator under a microscope. "This doesn't make sense," she muttered to herself. "These systems don't just fail like this." The next morning, she marched into Commander Adams' office without knocking. "Someone messed with our equipment," she announced, dropping the charred regulator on his desk. Adams frowned. "You think we have a spy?" "I think we have aliens," Kate replied. "Look at this." She pointed to a tiny section of the melted metal. This part was heated from the outside in, not the inside out. Something external caused this failure. Adams leaned back in his chair. "If the aliens are sabotaging us, that means we're on the right track," Kate finished with a grim smile. "They wouldn't bother if they weren't worried." After that, security around Project Longshot tightened. The facility implemented random scanner sweeps for alien technology. Workers were checked coming and going. Even the air ducts were monitored for the aliens' tiny drone devices. But the sabotage continued. Computer systems crashed, materials arrived contaminated, test results were corrupted. Kate and her team adapted. They began using analog systems alongside digital ones. They triple-checked all materials. Most importantly, they started thinking like their opponents. "If I were an alien trying to stop us, I'd focus on our power systems," Kate told her team one morning. "So we're going to build redundancies they won't expect." Instead of one large power core, they built 5 smaller ones. Instead of following standard engineering practices with clear power routing, they created a chaotic web of connections that only the human designers fully understood. The ship began to take shape, but it looked nothing like the sleek vessels from science fiction movies. The HMS Ugly Duckling resembled a junkyard creation, asymmetrical, with odd bulges and protrusions, cables and cooling pipes exposed on the outside, patches of different metals covering its surface. "It's the ugliest thing I've ever seen," Adams admitted as he and Kate observed the construction from the control room. "But is it going to work?" Kate nodded confidently. "The ugliness is part of the design now. Each weird shape, each exposed system serves a purpose. The aliens expect us to build something that follows their idea of proper engineering. This," she gestured to the bizarre craft, "this they won't understand." By month 5, they had achieved what seemed impossible, a working prototype of the full-scale FTL drive. It wasn't pretty. The wormhole generator required massive cooling systems. The dark energy collectors looked like giant metal spiders attached to the hull, but initial tests showed the system could create a stable wormhole large enough for the ship to pass through. Officer Zill was growing increasingly frustrated. His sabotage efforts were failing to stop the humans' progress. During his regular report to Captain Vox, he couldn't hide his concern. "They're adapting too quickly," Zill explained. "When we damage one system, they build 3 more to replace it. When we corrupt their data, they switch to paper backups. They're learning from our interference." Captain Vox's face showed rare emotion, alarm. "How close are they to a functional FTL system?" "Too close," Zill replied. "Their approach is completely unorthodox. They're using quantum tunneling theories that our scientists abandoned millennia ago as too unstable and unpredictable." "And too dangerous," Vox added. Their ship could tear a hole in spacetime itself. Or, Zill said quietly, it could work in ways our science hasn't explored. This possibility seemed to disturb Vox more than anything else. Increase sabotage efforts, move to Phase 2 if necessary. Phase 2 might alert them to our direct involvement, Zill warned. Vox's black eyes narrowed. That's a risk we'll have to take. No Level 2 species has ever developed independent FTL travel. The Alliance protocol is clear on this point. Back in Nevada, Kate's team was dealing with a new problem. Their latest test had created a small but stable wormhole, but the energy requirements were far beyond what they had expected. We need more power, Kate told Adams during their daily briefing. A lot more power. Where do we get it? Adams asked. We're already using enough electricity to power a small city. Kate hesitated, then pulled out a rough sketch. I have an idea, but it's as crazy as everything else we've done. The sketch showed a modified nuclear reactor connected directly to the ship's power core, a design that violated every safety protocol in the book. You want to put a nuclear reactor on the ship? Adams asked, his voice rising. That's not just dangerous, it's suicidal. Not a traditional reactor, Kate explained. Something new, a cold fusion approach that Dr. Lee has been working on. It theoretically produces 3 times the energy with half the radiation. She paused. Theoretically. How's it been tested? Kate laughed. Nothing we're doing has been properly tested, Commander. We're making this up as we go. After much debate, they approved the new reactor design. Construction began immediately, adding another bizarre component to the already strange-looking ship. The night before the reactor was installed, Adams couldn't sleep. He walked through the empty facility to the main hangar and stood looking at the ship. In the dim night lighting, the HMS Ugly Duckling looked even more bizarre, a jumble of parts that somehow formed a whole. You're worried. Adams turned to see Emily Reed standing behind him. The physicist had become an essential part of the team, bridging the gap between theoretical science and practical engineering. Wouldn't you be? Adams asked. Tomorrow we're putting an experimental nuclear reactor on an experimental spaceship with an experimental FTL drive. Emily nodded. It's terrifying, but also, she looked at the ship with something like pride, it's the most human thing I've ever seen. Oh, humans. Look at it, Emily said, gesturing to the bizarre craft. It breaks all the rules. It shouldn't work, but it does. It's ugly but effective. No other species would build something like this. She smiled. The aliens are right to be afraid. The next morning, as the reactor was being installed, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Security systems detected an energy surge from above, a powerful scanning beam from an alien ship. They're done with subtle sabotage, Adams told the emergency meeting of project leaders. They're moving to direct intervention. We need to launch now, Kate insisted. The ship isn't ready for a full FTL jump, but it can reach orbit. Once we're in space, we can finish the final calibrations away from their ground-based interference. That's too risky, one of the government officials argued. The ship hasn't completed safety testing. Kate laughed bitterly. Safety went out the window the moment we started this project. Every day we wait gives them more time to stop us. After heated debate, Adams made the call. Prepare for launch in 48 hours. Essential personnel only on board for the initial flight. As the meeting ended, Kate pulled Adams aside. There's something else you should know, she said quietly. During our last test, we detected something unexpected. The wormhole we created didn't just bend space, it bent time, very slightly but measurably. Adams stared at her. What does that mean? It means our FTL drive might be more powerful than we thought. Kate's eyes shone with excitement and fear. And if the aliens know that, they'll do anything to stop us from launching. That night, as the final preparations for launch began, Officer Zill made his last report to Captain Vox. Humans are preparing for launch, he said. Their ship is, he struggled to find the words. It's unlike anything in Alliance records, chaotic, inefficient, dangerous, but potentially functional. Captain Vox's expression was grim. Then we have no choice. Prepare the Phase 3 protocol. Planetary defense measures, Zill asked, shocked. But that would violate our non-intervention policies for developing worlds. This is no longer about policies, Vox replied coldly. This is about the stability of the Alliance itself. No Level 2 species can be allowed to develop independent FTL capability. He paused. Especially not one as unpredictable as humans. As the alien mothership moved into position above Nevada, the countdown to humanity's impossible launch continued below. Dawn broke over the Nevada desert as final preparations for launch continued underground. The massive hangar doors above the HMS Ugly Duckling remained closed, hiding the ship from the alien vessel now positioned directly overhead. In the control room, Commander Adams watched as his team worked frantically to complete pre-launch checks. Sweat beaded on foreheads, fingers flew over keyboards. No one had slept in over 24 hours. "Status report," Adams called out. "Main power at 93% and rising," came one reply. "Hull integrity checks complete. It's not pretty, but it'll hold," said another. "Wormhole generator cooling systems online," a third voice added. Kate Miller sat at the main engineering console, her eyes red from exhaustion. "The FTL drive is as ready as it'll ever be," she reported. "We can't do a full test sequence without alerting the aliens, so we're going in blind on some of the systems." Adams nodded grimly. "What about our guests?" Dr. Emily Reed looked up from her station. "The alien delegation has accepted our invitation to observe from the diplomatic viewing area. They think they're watching a simple orbital test flight." She lowered her voice. "They don't know about the FTL drive." "Or so we hope," Adams muttered. At exactly 700 hours, the alien delegation arrived. Captain Vox led the group, followed by Science Officer Mech and 6 other Alliance representatives. Officer Zill hung back, his eyes constantly scanning the facility. "Commander Adams," Captain Vox greeted with what passed for a smile on his alien face. "We're honored to be invited to witness this test of your, what did you call it?" "The Advanced Orbital Platform," Adams replied smoothly. "Nothing too exciting, just a new propulsion system for improving our orbital capabilities." "How quaint," Officer Mech commented. "Similar to the technology we provided to the Century system when they were at your level of development, about 300 years ago, I believe." Adams forced a smile. "We're just happy to make progress." The aliens were escorted to the observation deck, a reinforced room with a clear view of the underground launch bay. Security personnel stayed close, watching for any suspicious movements. Below in the launch bay, final preparations continued. The ship's crew, Kate, Emily, and 3 other essential personnel, boarded through the main airlock. The interior of the Ugly Duckling was as chaotic as its exterior, with exposed wiring, manual control systems alongside digital ones, and cooling pipes running along the ceilings. "Cozy," Emily commented as she strapped into her seat. "Function over form," Kate replied, activating the main systems. "Let's hope it all works." At 0730, Adams gave the order, "Begin launch sequence." The massive hangar doors above slowly slid open, revealing the bright morning sky and the underside of the alien mothership hovering above. In the observation room, Captain Vox's black eyes narrowed. "Your launch facility is directly beneath our vessel." "Pure coincidence," Adams lied. "We selected this site months ago." The alien captain didn't look convinced, but remained silent as the countdown continued. Inside the Ugly Duckling, Kate took a deep breath. Main engines starting in 3, 2, 1. The ship's conventional thrusters ignited with a roar that shook the entire facility. Immediately, warning lights flashed across control panels. "Port thruster at 132% capacity," one of the engineers shouted. "Overheating detected." "Coolant system 2 is failing," called another. Kate's fingers flew across the controls, rerouting coolant from system 3, adjusting thrust balance. On the observation deck, the aliens watched as the ungainly ship shuddered and belched smoke from various vents. "Is it supposed to do that?" Officer Mech asked with undisguised mockery. "New technology has quirks," Adams replied, trying to hide his own concern. The ship rose unsteadily from its cradle, lurching to one side before stabilizing. More warning sirens blared. A panel on the exterior suddenly broke free and crashed to the floor of the hangar. "Your vessel appears to be coming apart," Captain Vox observed. His tone was light, but his posture had tensed. Inside the ship, chaos reigned. Alarms screamed from every console. The entire craft vibrated violently. Steam hissed from rupturing pipes. "Main power fluctuating," Emily called out. "The reactor is cycling unpredictably." Kate gripped her controls tightly. Keep it together just a little longer, she whispered, whether to the ship or to herself was unclear. The ugly duckling continued its shaky ascent toward the open hangar doors. As it approached the exit, a loud bang echoed through the facility. One of the secondary engines had exploded, leaving a trail of black smoke. In the control room, Adams watched the disaster unfolding with his heart in his throat. The ship was barely functional, limping toward the sky rather than soaring, but it was still moving. "Should we abort?" his second-in-command asked quietly. Adams glanced at the aliens who were now watching with expressions of smug satisfaction. "No," he decided, "continue the launch." The ship cleared the hangar doors and entered open air, its ungainly form wobbling beneath the much larger alien mothership. The contrast couldn't have been more stark, the gleaming, perfect oval of alien technology hovering above the patched together, smoking human vessel. Captain Vox actually laughed. "Commander Adams, I admire your determination, but this is becoming dangerous." He gestured to the struggling ship. "That vessel is clearly unsafe. Allow us to help you bring it down safely before your crew is injured." Adams ignored him, watching the ship's progress on the monitors. "Come on, Kate," he muttered. "Show them what we can do." Inside the ugly duckling, Kate made her decision. "We're not going to make orbit like this," she announced to her crew. "New plan, we're activating the FTL drive now." Emily looked at her in shock. "In atmosphere, we haven't tested that configuration." "No time like the present," Kate replied with a grim smile. "Prime the wormhole generator, divert all power from non-essential systems." The ship continued to rise, trailing smoke and leaking fluids, putting distance between itself and the ground but still well within the atmosphere and directly beneath the alien mother ship. On the observation deck, Officer Zill suddenly stiffened. His sensors had detected an energy signature he recognized. "Captain," he called out urgently, "they're powering up a wormhole generator." Captain Vox spun around, his calm demeanor shattering. "Impossible." He turned to Adams, fury in his black eyes. "What have you done?" Adams smiled for the first time that day. "We took your mockery as a challenge, Captain." Aboard the ugly duckling, Kate initiated the final sequence. Wormhole generator at full power, creating fold in 3, 2, 1. The ship's bizarre external components suddenly came to life. The spider-like collectors extended, gathering dark energy from the surrounding space. The cooling systems vented massive plumes of steam. The patched hull began to glow with an eerie blue light. In the control room, monitors showed energy readings going off the charts. "That's 10 times the power we expected," one scientist gasped. On the observation deck, the aliens were now in full panic. Captain Vox was shouting orders into a communication device. Officer Mech was backing away from the windows, true fear on his face. The air around the ugly duckling began to distort. Light bent in impossible ways. A swirling vortex of energy formed directly in front of the ship, small at first but rapidly expanding. "Wormhole stabilized," Emily announced in disbelief. "It's actually working." Kate's hands flew over the controls, making last-second adjustments. "Preparing for FTL jump, hold on to something." The ship lurched forward, systems failing catastrophically across the board. Panels exploded, circuits fried.